Hopefully I have.
Yes,
Hopefully
you do.
good. Okay. All right then. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, friends, family, and new people that are welcome to join as part of the extended family as well. I am pleased this evening to introduce our guest, our speaker, Fred Axelgard. Dr. Axelgard comes to us as a lifelong student of the Book of Mormon and an independent scholar. He's an internationalist, having lived in Iran, Greece, Japan, Taiwan, Switzerland, Saudi Arabia, and Lebanon, and having also spent a number of years negotiating Arab-Israeli peace issues. So his compassion about refugees and the ethics of peace building have come to my attention in what I've been able to find about his writings. And so I identify very well with what I see there. And let me just cite as an example. Oh, but let me mention first of all, Robin, his wife, shares his interest in refugees. She's a volunteer, or been a volunteer at Lifting Hands International, and has served on the Utah Valley Refugee Board. And they have 5 children and 16 grandchildren. In his review of the Patrick Q. Mason Mormonism and Violence book, he challenges Mormons not to fit comfortably in the narrative of national violence. As a pacifist, I have particularly identified with what he's saying there. And here's a quote he has given in that review. There's a genuine need for creative, new thinking that focuses on discovering whether and how Mormonism might help make the wider world of the present and future a better place to live. Our fundamental theme that picks up on the Prince of Peace and tells us that we can be people of peace. That the Book of Mormon as a scripture does show the very non-functional, dysfunctional human family in numerous places, but it also shows that if those dysfunctional people will accept the teachings of the Christ, they can learn to live together in peace. And for us to be able to pass on that kind of information, and for me as site director at the Joseph Smith III home, which was established to be what he called Liberty Hall, a place for people to gather and discuss, reason together, and do so with dignity and respect. That process is so much the foundation of our ability to find the truth. And when we can discuss together and find the truth, then our chances of living together in peace are dramatically enhanced. He will address us this evening on the title page of the Book of Mormon, and you'll recall that emphasizes that it is to be a testimony of Jesus being the Christ, the Son of the living God, and for us to be able to implement that message as people who are called to become people of peace is, I think, a profound message. So I'm very much looking forward to what Brother Axelgard has to share with us this evening. And with that, let us pray together. And by the way, the photos of the recent for Northern Lights at the Joseph Smith House in Lamoni. Prince of Peace, through whom we address all supplications to the divine. We bow to thank you for the example you have given, substituting bread for your body and for your blood, wine. For in that substitution we find encapsulated the call to make changes of significance in our ways, that we replace hate with love, greed with generosity, or with peace to bless our children's days. And as we seek to ameliorate traditions of violence so prevalent in our past, we recognize the prevalence of that theme throughout our history, creating walls of separation so vast. So as we bow before you in this small forum on this November Eve, we ask your gentle spirit to nudge us with its whisper of words of peace in which we believe. Added to the marvelous beauty you have provided us this past week in Northern Lights, your words entice us to use our own illumination to advocate for refugees, for peace, for human rights. And so this evening, bless our presenter, Dr. Axelgard, and our participants in our exploration of evidence that Jesus is the Christ, the child of God, sent to save the souls of a repentant mankind. And help us apprehend, embrace, and embody his message that peace is available to us in body, emotion, spirit, in our world, and in our mind. We pray in his name, Jesus, the Prince of Peace. Amen. Brother Axelgard, give you the option of presenting and taking the questions afterwards, or if you prefer and would like to have people be able to interrupt you as you present and ask their questions and make their comments as you go, then you have that option. And so if you'll let us know that in advance, we'll try to be in compliance.
You'll need to unmute, Fred. There you
Yeah,
go.
let's wait till the end, but I just might pause and ask once in a while. So what do you think of that? And we might go down a rabbit hole here or there. Hopefully it won't be a gopher hole or a sand trap. But let me see if I can get a little bit of momentum and rhythm going, and then maybe turn it into a conversation after all. But let's start off that way. Is that okay, Paul? You
That's
think?
fine. That's fine.
Okay. Okay. So I'll go ahead and set my screen here for screen sharing.
Okay, we see the Book of Mormon and the copyright application.
Okay. Now that's where I want to start there.
Okay.
Let me just as Brother Paul noted, I've written over the years quite a bit. Actually, not that much. When I get going on a project, I kind of really focus down. This title page, 2 years almost of study on one page might seem a little bit much, except to those who know me. And but I've got a copy of one of those old Book of Mormons with the bright blue cover, a paperback, and a little note to myself dated October of 1978. And I have in quotation marks, The Hand of Mormon. I've been studying basically since 1978, off and on, but with some intensity, just looking for primarily for evidence of Mormon's fingerprints in the Book of Mormon. And it's kind of a narrow focus, but it's sustained me for almost 50 years. And I love the book. And I sometimes wonder whether I'm too academic and not, if you will, devotional enough, trying to find that balance. So I would be interested in your comments tonight, whether it was a little bit too sterile or whether the balance was okay. Sometimes, well, I can overthink things, and maybe I'm not the only one on the call that can do that. All right, so it's a privilege. I've got some notes here that I'm going to use, but I won't be too slavish about it. Happy to share these thoughts. A couple of years worth of study about the title page. Even though I'll try to work from top to bottom through the page. I will be able to share just a pretty small portion of what I've gleaned from my study. I focused on the modern historical development of the title page, plus some interpretive commentary. Interpretive in the spiritual sense and in the literary sense, kind of analytical, but also just on kind of devotional thoughts. I consciously sidestepped the scholarly debate on who wrote the title page, and in favor of just focusing on the text itself. My working hypothesis, though, is that this is an ancient text written by Moroni. And what you're looking at here is one of the real sweet takeaways in my research. It's the paragraph from the paragraph in the Joseph Smith papers. It's the transcription of Joseph's statement about the ancient nature of the title page. And you'll see on the right-hand side there some scratch through there, a strike through. I love the immediacy sometimes that you can get from the Joseph Smith papers, and I've used them quite a bit here in my research. Okay, here we go. What you have looking at here is what we call the proof sheet of the title page, which was submitted with the Book of Mormon copyright application in June of 1829. This is the first typeset printed document that we have in Mormonism. It was submitted alongside with an application form, which is on the right-hand side. The middle part of that application form, maybe if I guess I can't. Oops, and I lost it. Can you see my cursor swirling around there? Okay, that portion is also the text of the title page, handwritten by the clerk of the court there. This, both documents were submitted to the government for copyright approval. When they arrived at the Library of Congress, though, they were cataloged separately. So the one on the left, the proof sheet, was actually lost for a long time, and was discovered, though, in time for the holdings of the Library of Congress in time for the 2005 Joseph Smith bicentennial. But for many, many years, study of the title page was limited to using that document on the right. This 1829 proof sheet, however, is kind of inconclusive. It's even a mysterious reference point if you're trying to kind of establish a baseline for studying the title page. First, we don't really know who printed it. It was prepared before E.B. Grandin came under contract to print the Book of Mormon. And the font in this page does not match anything that is known to be in his shop at the time. The proof sheet resembles but is not identical to the 1830 title page of the Book of Mormon, which you see on the right. Here's some similarities. The basic structure is there. You've got two paragraphs of text beneath the title and subtitle. That basic structure has, maintained until today. You'll see at the bottom reference to Joseph Smith as author and proprietor of the work. That's consistent between the two. And you'll notice, and this is what I've underlined in red, what I call an unusual paragraph break. The break places the first part of the reference to the abridgment from the Book of Ether at the end of paragraph 1, and the rest of it at the beginning of paragraph 2. The resemblance between the 1829 and 1830 versions, and especially this misplaced reference to the Ether language, raises the question of whether the typesetter for 1830 actually used this 1829 proof sheet as a baseline. If so, it would have been from a different non-extant copy, because this particular sheet, as I said, was submitted to the government for processing, and those overseeing the preparation of the 1830 Book of Mormon would not have had access to this proof sheet. The printer's manuscript would not have been much help in formatting and coming up with the format of the title page as we now see it. The printer's manuscript basically gives you the text of the title page without any punctuation, no paragraph structure and no sentence structure. So it really isn't of much help if you're again trying to understand the development of the history of the page. Um, let's see. Okay, can we take a little digression here? What you've got now is on the left-hand side, the handwritten copyright application version, and then the printer's manuscript on the right. And it's a little hard to read them both, but I wanted to point out that the top half of the printer's manuscript, this portion here, is the text of the title page. The bottom half is taken from over here. It's taken from the pre-printed top portion of the copyright application. I've tried that red line here kind of shows you where the reference to the Northern District Court of New York is. And then at the bottom, you can see a reference to the clerk's name. Again, I've outlined that in red. But this document also would not have been available to the printer, to Oliver Cowdery. So it's a little unclear either how or why he felt the need to include information from that copyright application onto this page of the printer's manuscript. So a little bit of mystery there. No answers, but just a little bit of mystery, if you don't mind. This 1830 statement by Joseph Smith for the church history, which he was dictating at the time, is, however, a more decisive reference point. I have on the left-hand side, actually, again from the Joseph Smith papers, a little picture of the draft of the 1830 statement. I've transcribed the draft of that statement on the left, and then transcribed for you the finalized statement on the right. And it's a busy slide, the transcription, but I'm going to take you through it as best I can. My theme on this point is it's a very particularized, a very specific statement by Joseph. If you note first the red text, Joseph uses the term title page 4 times, and in each instance, the scribe capitalizes it. The green there shows Joseph referring to the title page first as a literal translation and then as a genuine and literal translation. The yellow highlights his kind of insistence on a certain ordering to the language. You'll see that he crosses out, he has the scribe delete the phrase "and not by any means," but then reinserts it just a line or two later. And then finally, the well-known portion in blue, where he specifies very precisely where in the collection of plates he found the text of the title page. The next edition of the Book of Mormon, printed in 1840, in other words, the next one after making that 1830 statement, picked up on this point of ancientness. To emphasize the ancient authorship of the text, you'll see here that the editors decided to add the word Moroni at the bottom. This practice went on for a few years, but not all that long, because I think somebody realized that altering the page by adding something new, even if it's Moroni's name, defeats the purpose of maintaining the ancient integrity of the title page. But there's kind of a parallel situation in the LDS Church more recently. In 1982, it was decided to add the subtitle, Another Testament of Jesus Christ. But kind of like with the name Moroni, it's a valid application about it. It's valid to think of that in terms of the title page, but they didn't superimpose it on the ancient title page. They created a half title page, which is now the first page you encounter when you open the Book of Mormon. And I see a parallel between them doing that and the way they decided if you will, anciently or last couple of centuries ago to remove reference to Moroni at the bottom. I think it's safe to say that the title page is one of the most overlooked pages in the Book of Mormon. Um, it's easy to overlook, and I think one factor in that is that there is placement of modern introductory material after the title page, but before the text of the Book of Mormon begins itself. Um, all editions of the Book of Mormon, except for two that I have found, have inserted this kind of modern editorial material that separates the ancient page from the beginning of First Nephi. In 1830, as you'll see here on the left, there was a preface that Joseph inserted right after the title page. And here on the right, you see an introduction to the Book of Mormon, which comes right after the title page. And I think that the intervening material creates distance. It separates the text, the title page from the text, and kind of dilutes the message Joseph was so insistent on of the book, the title page being ancient by mixing it in with this modern editorial material. Let me also mention the absence of footnotes. Understandably, it wouldn't do to actually impose footnotes on the title page itself, but there's nothing to prevent putting footnotes in the text of the Book of Mormon that refer back to the title page, but none of those exist. I think both of these factors, the intervening material, the presence of intervening material, the absence of connective footnotes, create kind of a question mark about the significance or importance of the title page. It's perhaps little wonder that it doesn't get due consideration as a page of scripture that is integral to the Book of Mormon and perhaps therefore not worthy of sustained, focused attention, which is why I went and spent 2 years giving some sustained, focused attention. I thought I would throw in here, this is what the 1842 edition looks like. You can see on the left, if you will, a half title page that gives the book, the title of the book, Joseph Smith's role, and then publication material. And then in the middle, the ancient title page, which is placed right before the beginning of the first Nephi there. It would be interesting just to see the book configured that way again. I think it would change people's perception almost immediately. And just a quick look at scholars and the title page. These two pages you're looking at are taken from the most recent versions, edited versions of the Book of Mormon, prepared by Grant Hardy on the left and Royal Skousen on the right. And this is the third edited version that Grant Hardy has prepared of the Book of Mormon. Others were dated 2003, 2018, when he did one for the Maxwell Institute at BYU. And then here's this is for Oxford, the Annotated Book of Mormon prepared for 2023. Each one of those three Books of Mormon has a different title page. On the right, you've got Royal Skousen with his second edition in 2022 of the Book of Mormon, the earliest text. This title page differs from the title page that he presented in his 2009 version. The message that I take from the scholars and also from my research is that the title page is still in flux. What it is and how it fits is still something of a conundrum. Is it an epilogue or a prologue? Anciently, it was the last thing written on the plates. In modern times, it's in an introductory position. This ancient modern tension, is it significant or is it not? The title page as we have it today, as beginning with 1830, makes no reference, doesn't give any play to the small plates of Nephi, which of course can constitute now the first 6 books of the Book of Mormon. So that makes it a little bit sketchy as an introduction. Maybe it's a tribute because it's called the Book of Mormon. Maybe Moroni intended it as a tribute to his father. Or maybe the way it's written, it's intended to bring closure to a 1,000-year experiment in prophetic ministering that ended in catastrophe. It also might be Moroni's prayer. It can be looked at as a prayer that Moroni offers over the future of the book. My own take is that the title page sets in motion the second life of the Book of Mormon. And that seems to me to be its core mission. Moroni envisions here the book emerging into a new world, addressed to numberless future generations of potential believers in Christ. He's bearing this record with an eye to its rebirth. And I think the title page kind of acts as that eye. Okay, I'm going to pause here and let's see what any questions or comments you might have. Maybe we can just take a couple. I'm going to start turning to the text of the title page itself. This is a little bit more than throat clearing, but it's still kind of stage setting.
I find this last slide to be fascinating. The epilogue or prologue. Yeah, the question of how we should appreciate, how we should understand, how we should employ it, and then looking at all the various publications that we have. I'm intrigued. I'm fascinated by what you're saying. Um, but take us back to the prayer, if you would, please. I would like to better understand how the title page is a prayer.
Um, when you picture, there's this iconic picture of Moroni kneeling on the ground next to, at least it's in the LDS culture. He's got the plates by the side and he's kneeling next to a hole in the ground. I'm not really invoking that moment, or that picture, but there's a moment in time when this single person on an obscure hillside in total silence and isolation is putting a couple of, a small number of objects in the ground and burying them, somehow with the expectation that they're going to change the world at some point. And with that moment in mind, Moroni is approaching that moment, that setting, as he prepares the title page. And if you read it with that isolation, the amount of faith it took to actually have that expectation in his heart, given the setting that he was in, that's what makes me think of it in that way, Paul.
Thank you for that clarification. That's beautiful commentary on an obscure point in history. Wow.
Yeah. Again, we talked a little bit, these very small, even obscure moments in the Lord's hands can blossom into significance. Jerry, I'm not seeing everybody, but Jerry, I see your hand is up. Do you want to go ahead?
He's
You're still muted, Jerry. Paul, are you in a position to unmute as the host or not?
No,
I-
I'm not.
I can ask him to.
Okay, there he is.
Sorry, I'm on my phone, so it's kind of hard. Yeah, I just had a question. Maybe we'll talk about it later. When did the dashes get added into the text?
All right, don't steal my thunder. I was down at the BYU library today. I actually held in my hands the Book of Mormon that the committee that revised the book of in the 1920 edition, the markups, it's called, they have two of them. There's the committee version and the correction committee copy and the corrections copy. And I was trying to find out who in the world blessed the idea of the dashes. So I don't have an answer, but I've got an opinion, and you'll get that later.
Right.
Apologies.
Is that okay, Jerry?
Yeah, I always thought it was kind of like the prefaces or something. They just felt like the formatted or something.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me go ahead. Jean, is it Jean or Jeannie?
It's Jeannie. Jeannie, did you have something you wanted to say?
No,
Okay,
Okay. All right. Then I'll go ahead and continue if that'd be okay.
sure.
Let's go ahead and get into the text of the Book of Mormon itself, and we'll turn to the title and subtitle first. You may not believe it, but I spent almost a month just thinking about the title and subtitle of the Book of Mormon. If you think about it, the title and subtitle actually launch the structure and tone of the title page because they declare very boldly the role of human hands in the project. And this, in turn, to me, makes it necessary for Moroni, when it gets to the end, he has to caution people about the limitations that might accrue or might result from this human involvement. So right off the bat, the beginning and the end, to me, are kind of set in place. If you think about the text that's between these two bookends, between the beginning and the end, it organically, I like that word, I may use it again, it organically interweaves the roles played by the hand of men and the hand of God in the life of this book. It was written by men, but divinely inspired, buried by a man, but hidden up unto the Lord, prepared by men, but to realize God's universal purposes, laden with human weakness, but a key to being found spotless at God's judgment. So what I'm saying is that beginning with the title and subtitle, I see a kind of sympathetic tension at work, wherein human hands are shown striving to do heavenly things. And when I stopped to think about it, I thought that was also kind of an interesting and somewhat accurate reflection of what takes place within the book itself. Hope that wasn't too academic. Just well, don't keep me in check. Just let me know afterwards if it's too sterile. All right, we're now looking at the first, the title, subtitle, and the first lines of the title page. A few thoughts about this opening portion. So in red, you'll see the fourfold repetition of the word written. First thing that strikes me about this is it's deliberate. I don't think repetition like this, kind of one right after the other, is accidental. And again, just looking at it, you can see that it forms a kind of cornerstone for this early part, in the structure of this early part of the title page. But this isn't just bland repetition of one in the meaning of these words. If you look at the first written, an account written by the hand of Mormon upon plates, taken from plates, to me, that written signifies the physical act of engraving on plates on the one hand, and also the taking from the plates and distilling 1,000 years of history. That was Mormon's burden. The second one, written to the Lamanites, means it was composed with that audience in mind, has a different sense of the word written. Written by way of commandment, by spirit of prophecy and revelation, speaks to the divine origins of the book. And when it says written and sealed up, to me, it indicates the book's completion. There's an evolution right through there, I think, that I think is real and significant. There are also some hints to the Book of Mormon history in these lines. When you call the Lamanites a remnant of the house of Israel, you're pointing to the Jerusalem origins of Lehi and his family, for one thing. But when you say remnant, you're also implying that with the Lamanites as the remnant, the Nephites are gone. Um, and when you say hidden up, it also that they might not be destroyed again is a suggestion that the Nephites are gone. Otherwise, if they were there, there'd be no need to hide the records up unto the Lord. It speaks here as well of the phrase there is the record of the people of Nephi and also of the Lamanites. Wonder sometimes if people think that's kind of makes the Lamanites an afterthought. But then if you look almost immediately, there are two additional references to the Lamanites. It says also the Lamanites, written to the Lamanites who are a remnant. Those are direct references to the Lamanites. You get with the Nephites one and done, one reference to the people of Nephi, and they're gone from the title page, disappeared just as they disappeared from history. But if you look at the whole of the title page, direct and implied references to the Lamanites, there's about a dozen of them. And I've listed them here. You may want to study this on your own at some point, but they've got nouns and pronouns and possessive adjectives that refer directly to the Lamanites. And then if it says written to the Lamanites, well, if it's written by way of commandments, it's written to the Lamanites by way of commandments. Written and sealed up means written to the Lamanites and sealed up, and so forth. The Lamanites, in fact, are the most pervasive presence on the title page. It's a Lamanite-centric document, I think you can argue. All right, now we're going to turn to the second half of that first paragraph. I've highlighted here the lines I'm going to talk about for a minute. This is how they're formatted today with the dashes that Jerry, is that right? Mentioned. This is the way it's looked over time. There have been actually, I've counted 5 different ways that this particular part of the title page has been depicted. In the 1829 proof sheet, they were just these clauses were just part of one long sentence that made up the first paragraph of the title page. In the 1830 and 1837 Books of Mormon, you'll see I've inserted a little red triangle there. There's extra space inserted before the word written, and then the word written there is capitalized. So it's it makes this its own sentence within that paragraph. But now here, going back to the 1838 statement that Joseph made for the history, again, this beautiful, I love this transcription from the Joseph Smith papers. You'll see this paragraph, these lines are now indented, written beautifully, capitalized and indented. And then if you look at the end of the line, the end of the phrase, after the phrase, the interpretation there by the gift of God, period, a whole bunch of empty horizontal space, clearly separating these lines from the text surrounding it. So I think basically making it its own paragraph. And then in 1920, as we see, with the introduction of dashes, we have all of these short capitalized phrases. I would say that prior to the 1920 edition, you have a consistent, holistic depiction of Moroni's writing, which gives you room to look at it as a coherent, complex, integrated thought. Once these dashes are brought into the picture, it breaks the entire title page into shortened segments. So it went from being one paragraph to 4 short separated segments. The impact of these dashes to me is that it homogenizes the text. What I mean by that is that each segment here is given the same structural weight, and the highlight is given to the separate and, if you will, simplified meanings of each of the separate phrases. It gives little clue and not much encouragement to think about how the segments relate to each other and to the text as a whole. And to me, it tends to discount the idea that Moroni was thinking in an integrated and coherent way as he wrote this title page. Is that a little bit too hard hitting, or I pulled a punch or two there? I don't. Yeah, let me pause there. Jerry, any thoughts? Does that answer your question, or go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, one of the questions too was, like I said, the prefaces have this type of structure within the text. Maybe the committee was trying to match the title page with the prefaces. I don't know,
You're talking about the headings for each of the separate books of the Book of Mormon.
yeah, or even some of the
Yeah.
prefaces inside. I mean, there's
The
the
chap, yeah, okay, yeah, the introductory material before each chapter. Yeah.
yeah. I think that's the only actual punctuation that's found in the original text is a dash in one of those chapter headings. So I don't know. Again, I'm kind of looking at it. What were they thinking?
And that's what I'm trying to figure out. My research so far has been what is uncovered is that those who edited the 1920 Book of Mormon were given pretty much carte blanche when it came to punctuation and capitalization. The first presidency was looking very carefully at the text and the wording, but they didn't really review. So my sense is that James Talmage came up with this idea for some reason, and I haven't been able to discover that logic. And I hate to speculate about it because it's a pretty dramatic change to the title page coming around there in 1920. Thank you for those thoughts, though. All right.
But I'd like to introduce another one.
Okay.
It strikes me as being very interesting that in the more modern world, we have come to a simplification of language, which was not as characteristic in the 1800s, 1900s. We see that Joseph Smith's writing frequently is many, many words, many lines long per sentence and paragraph. And the idea of people being able to comprehend and embrace a more complex idea was rather given, whereas in the more modern world, we write to fifth graders and try to make sure that we don't make things too complex so that they can be readily understood. And I think that generally applies for much of our university work, that we have a tendency to write to oversimplify to make sure that we get all the little ideas in there. In the process, we may very well obscure, as you're suggesting, some of the greater continuity that's within the original intent.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think you're when you were talking, what came to mind to me was the way we use bullet points. Everybody writes in, not everybody, but we tend to write and almost think in terms of bullet points. Things have to be in short, digestible sound bites, and
Right.
and again, thinking in an integrated and comprehensive way is not instinctive. If it ever was, it certainly isn't now.
Also evident in the length of our sermons.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I actually have a question. This is David, David Denning in St. George.
Yes. See you, David.
Who, okay, who was it that did the 1920s edition?
There was a committee set up that consisted of 6 members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles in the LDS Church, and they George F. Richards was the chair nominally, but James E. Talmage was the most active member of that committee. Does that help?
Yes. What my thought that I have on this is, has anybody ever looked at their writings and see how often they use that dash. Because
That's a, yeah,
sometimes when
yeah.
people are doing things like that, it would be based upon the grammar of the day that they understand.
Well, you're kind of summarizing a point made to me. There's a gentleman, he's a professor at Southern Utah University. His name is, I think, Rick or Richard Saunders. He wrote a whole book just on the 1920 edition of the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
And his point is that it was may have been the convention at the time. That was his word, convention. And I think that's perhaps essentially what you're saying as well.
Yeah, that was just something I was thinking because
Something comfortable.
which is why often they go through and they come back and redo the punctuation.
Sure.
To
Jerry,
bring
go
it
ahead. You had
to bring
oh,
it to
sorry.
date. Sorry.
Just one other thought, because it wasn't done, it wasn't Grandin doing the punctuation, or maybe even Oliver Cowdery, I guess we don't know. At least the two last ones, and also and now, those are breaks, that they did in the punctuation in the actual text of the Book of Mormon. So maybe they're trying to be consistent, at least in those two. I don't know about the other written. So.
Okay. Thank you for
Okay.
pointing that out.
Brian Stubbs has a question also. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, since we're on the topic of dashes for quite a while, I might as well toss my opinion in. I happen to love dashes in the Book of Mormon because the it, a dash basically means a non-continuity of something different about the grammar. It's not, you write too many dashes in an English paper, and boy, you'll get docked a lot. They don't rarely do we use dashes, but then the ancient Arabic and Hebrew and all the Near East languages and most Native American languages just put together differently and a lot longer and not with complete subject, verb, object clauses. And it's exactly like this um, title page and much of the Book of Mormon. That's why there are so many dashes in the Book of Mormon. And to me, that's good evidence of something different than original English. In other words, a somebody in Joseph Smith's day, even if they tried to convolute it like that, they wouldn't do a very good job. They might get started, but they'd keep forgetting, and so I find the dashes quite impressive myself.
I love them in the text of the book. I'm not in love with the title page text. I haven't made that connection before, but in the text of the Book of Mormon, so many times when a dash crops up, Mormon is about to interject a comment or something, put a to make a point. Anyway, you're right. There's just they're really used in really interesting ways within the body of the Book of Mormon. I'm a big fan there, so I'm on the same page with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and this was written by Mormon, as was the Book of Mormon, then I'm not sure that we should expect any fewer dashes in the title page than in the Book of Mormon. But yeah, anyway, I agree with you.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm going to spend just a minute or two on this portion that we're talking about. I've reconfigured it here without the dashes to treat it like they did in the 1838 version as a paragraph. And to me, it helps Moroni's the cogency of his writing here to stand out. There's two clear unifying threads here in this particular paragraph. One is he decisively shifts the time sense of the title page to the future. That all happens right here in this paragraph. And also, this is where he sets forth the active hand of God in the record's future. I think there's also something else going on here that I'd be interested if anybody else shares this opinion, but there is life and death symbolism embedded here, woven in here. Moroni is about to bury the record, and that's the natural consequence, if you will, follow on to the death of the Nephites. but the coming forth of the book is a resurrection, both for the book and for its peoples who otherwise would be forgotten to history. I also see in the reference to the hiding up and burying the book a veiled reference to that phrase, a voice from the dust. I looked through the Book of Mormon, and reference to speaking a voice from the dust goes way back, goes back to Joseph in Egypt. It's not just Isaiah that spoke in those terms. So this not so veiled reference, I think this is a not so veiled reference to that theme, that image that has been out there for centuries with respect to the Book of Mormon and its coming forth. So what I'm saying in essence is that the meaning and the effectiveness of Moroni's writing, I think, becomes clearer if we treat it kind of holistically. Let me see. All right. Now we're going to go back to that Book of Ether language. This change that happened between 1830 and 1837 is one of the most interesting aspects of the evolution of the title page, the historical evolution. You'll see what happened in 1830. They had that, it was broken, the paragraph break broke the Ether language in two, and there in 1837, it's consolidated. It's patched back together and placed at the beginning of the second paragraph. This seems like a simple, straightforward fix, but I think there's some dominoes that fall from that we'll talk about later. And let me also encourage you, just take a look at that 1837 version. Look at the end of the first paragraph, and you'll see a colon. It's not normal, I don't think, even in those days, to punctuate the end of a paragraph with a colon. But my sense is that perhaps the editors at that point had a lingering interest in keeping a connection between those two paragraphs. You wouldn't think it, but I could find 5 minutes to talk just about a single colon. So I won't stop here, but I'll anyway. You can see how I go down a rabbit hole sometimes. I'm going to shift now to the title page purpose statements, and these purpose statements really are the highlight or the crux of the matter, if you will, on the title page. This is how they look in the current configuration, embedded in the second paragraph, if you will, maybe even buried a bit in the middle of that second paragraph. And now I'm just bringing that up into a bit bigger picture, closer look, so you can see. I would suggest that these two declarations, these two purpose statements, are the centerpiece of the Book of Mormon, but that their importance and their meaning are potentially compromised by the way they're positioned on the title page. Part of the problem with what to do with them, how to display them, is the wording itself. If you look at both statements, they begin imprecisely. The first one starts off, which is to show unto the remnant of the house of Israel. That's beginning a sentence or a thought with a relative pronoun. So what's the antecedent to which? It isn't that clear what the antecedent is. And then look at the second one, and also to the convincing of the Jew and Gentile. Again, the same question. What does the word also refer back to? Where are the antecedents here? So I'm basically saying that there's some imprecise kind of open-ended language that starts both of these purpose statements, which leads you to look back to what precedes it immediately in order to explain what it's talking about. The closest antecedent for these two purpose statements is the abridgment of the Book of Ether. The way the title page is laid out, it is entirely possible to read it as saying that these two purpose statements pertain only to Moroni's abridgment of the Book of Ether. This came pretty forcefully to my attention. If you think I'm just kind of making this up to have an academic argument to make, I taught some lessons about the title page a couple of years ago at BYU Education Week, and this very intelligent and experienced student of the scriptures, Chinese native speaking woman came up to me and just held out the title page and said, "What does this mean? Are they saying that these purposes only are for the Book of Ether, for Moroni's abridgment?" And that caught my attention. And I also went off and looked at the French and German. My French and German is good enough for me to kind of understand what's going on there. My Arabic, I've got a good friend who did the Arabic translation of the Book of Mormon. This ambiguity at this point in the Book of Mormon is at an unfortunate spot, given how important these purpose statements are. But it happened because the 1837 version of the title page consolidated the ether language into the beginning of the second paragraph. It could have gone at the end of the first paragraph. And I don't know why we did one way or the other, but if it had gone to the first paragraph, this ambiguity would have been, I think, resolved. You would be able to see that the purpose statements, which would then be positioned at the beginning of a paragraph, again, which gives them more prominence, they would refer back to the first paragraph in its entirety, meaning both Mormon's abridgment and Moroni's. I kind of garbled the language a little bit there, but I think you see my point, that both the meaning of these statements and their significance is impeded a bit by the way the title page is structured. So there you go. We're winding down here. Is everybody? I can't see everybody's faces. I hope you haven't fallen asleep yet. But this is. I'd like to focus for a few minutes on that second purpose statement, and also to the convincing of the Jew and Gentile that Jesus is the Christ, the eternal God, manifesting Himself unto all nations. It seems pretty clear to me that at this important juncture in the title page, Moroni dips into the writings of Nephi. You'll see a reference there to a passage in 2 Nephi 26. And Moroni borrows the same words in the same order as Nephi writes them, and especially that entire 7-word phrase that Jesus is the Christ. It's 8 words, that Jesus is the Christ, the eternal God. I think that's quite interesting and significant. Grant Hardy has written quite a bit about Moroni's affinity for the writings of Nephi. I won't go down that rabbit hole at this point, but I think there's some consistency there that Moroni, would look to Nephi's writings at a critical point in his here. Let me just go down here now. This purpose statement consists of 3 phrases. There's a core message that Jesus is the Christ, the eternal God, surrounded by 2 other phrases, both of which use active participles to declare the universality of the core message. The first phrase speaks of convincing the Jew and Gentile. This is using a classic biblical trope or figure of speech. And to me, that underscores the fact that the Book of Mormon's mission includes confirming the message of the Bible. That third phrase, the active participle there, is manifesting. And in this case, the active agent of that participle is Jesus Himself, manifesting Himself unto all nations. In this phrase, the Bible fades into the background, and the Book of Mormon's autonomous witness of the Savior comes into the foreground. And I see this as an implicit but still pretty transparent allusion to the Savior's multiple manifestations to the peoples of the Book of Mormon, not just the Nephites and Lamanites, but also the Jaredites. I would also point out there that the phrase at the end there refers to all nations. And that means not just Nephites, not just Jaredites and Lehites. But to me, the title page here is alluding to realities and to texts that go beyond both the Bible and the Book of Mormon to testify of a truly universal Messiah. And just a couple of additional thoughts. To this point on the title page, there have been 7 distinct references to deity. All of them have been instrumental, speaking about the power of God to inspire, to preserve, to bring forth the Book of Mormon to a remnant he has chosen. But the phrasing here is different. It's worshipful, it's close, it's warm, it's intimate, and it's compelling in its simplicity. It gives this all-powerful God a name and an identity. Moroni has invoked the hand of God at every turn here in the title page, but this intimate reference here in these lines animates and empowers and gives scope to all of the other references. And brief as they are, these tender words fill a vast space. Without them, the title page, I think, would be a comparative empty shell. And we'll conclude this evening, or my part of it anyway, with a close reading, a contextualized reading of Moroni's important concluding statement. First 3 observations about the statement. It's a complete sentence. The only other complete sentence structurally is there at the beginning of the title page, the one that says, wherefore it's an abridgment of the record of the people of Nephi. I'm just wondering if there's structural and even semantic significance to the fact that the Book of Mormon title page begins and ends with complete sentences. But note this, the second observation, this particular statement has 2 separate clauses to it, both of which could act independently, could stand alone. But in fact, there's a semicolon there, and you'll see I've made that in green. That semicolon has been in place in every published Book of Mormon edition that I could find. And then there's the word wherefore, again, which is a transition word. The message, Tim, that I take here is not to separate the 2 parts of the statement, but to consider them. The Moroni's intent is that we consider them together in an integrated fashion. And then the last observation here is that suddenly we are thrown into a second person voice. The whole title page has been from a third person perspective, descriptive and then declaratory. But here the imperative is condemn not the things of God. And then the second person pronoun, that ye may be found spotless at the judgment seat of Christ. Again, what does it mean that the title page ends with this second person direct admonition? I'll just leave that question up in the air for the time being, if I might. The most significant changes in wording, and I'm not talking about like the movement of the ether language didn't change the wording, it just kind of reorganized it. But here we actually have at the end of this part of at the end of the title page some significant changes in wording. The first 5 lines in that first clause of the 1830 Book of Mormon version of this statement, 5 words were changed when the 1837 edition came out, and they've remained changed ever since. 2 kinds of changes were made. The verbs were changed from the singular subjunctive to the plural indicative, and the nouns were changed from singular to plural. I think these are significant because the subjunctive, if there be fault, it be the mistake of men, makes this statement openly hypothetical. If you change and use the indicative, if there are faults, they are the mistakes of men, weakens that sense pretty significantly. The same with the nouns. In the singular, the word fault and the word mistake are collective and generalized, and they point to overall condition of human weakness in the writing here. But now, if you say, if there are faults, they are the mistakes of men, you're pointing quite readily to the probability of individual and multiple errors in the text. So I asked the question, what would Moroni be doing here at the end of the title page? Is he throwing out a caution about a generalized caution about weakness in writing? Or is he confessing to and apologizing for random errors in the text? My conclusion is that, and when read in context, it's pretty clear he is cautioning the reader about a generalized weakness, that this is not an apology for mistakes. And this is the context that I see that statement in. The first part of reading it in context is to keep the two halves of the statement connected. If there be fault, it be the mistake of men, wherefore condemn not the things of God. The point here is to urge a non-condemnatory reading, not to point out the probability of faults and send people off looking for mistakes. Secondly, the context would take the account of what Moroni has just written about the mission of the Book of Mormon to be the convincing of the Jew and Gentile that Jesus is the Christ, the eternal God manifesting himself unto all nations. Given the significance and the challenge, the universality of that mission, I think you'd almost be compelled to acknowledge that whatever writing a human being might undertake wouldn't be as powerful or as effective as it deserves to be for the sake of that mission. And then the third sense of context, I see the title page overall, as I said, with the sympathetic tension involved, conveying this message. If through the power of God and the work of human hands, you receive this book, for your own sake, approach it receptively, despite the faint way it might be written. So I guess, and structurally, the bottom line when Moroni comes to the end of the title page, which would he be doing? Urging readers to take responsibility for the way they approach the book, or casting blame in the direction of the writers? And I think it's, again, pretty obvious to me that he would be urging the readers to take responsibility. And that's, in fact, what he does right there in Moroni chapter 10. That beautiful verse, it says, when you receive these things, read them with sincerity and openness of heart and with real intent. I think this last part of the title page is a direct echo of that beautiful passage in Moroni chapter 10. All right, that's all. Sorry, you guys. That was a lot.
No apology needed.
Oh, hey, sorry. You want to? Okay, okay. I won't go into these, but these are my leftover slides. This is the configuration of the Book of Mormon that you get following through my study. The way it looks to me in my mind when I okay. This is showing you how Grant Hardy changed his title page. That's showing you how Skousen changed his. And then this is the last change I can find on the title page. If you see the word house of Israel in the first paragraph, you see it up there, not capitalized. Then in the second paragraph, it is capitalized. And it was still capitalized in the 1980, that discrepancy, that inconsistency was still there in the 1981 version. And even in the book of the triple combination that I bought in the early 2000s, that discrepancy was still there. So to me, it's still a work in flux. And I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Wow, we have a lot of people that want to raise their hands, but I'm going to lay claim to that privilege of the first question and comment. And let me say thank you, Fred. This is, in my view, an awesome presentation. And I appreciate your being able to shake the dust off this title page and help us see more clearly. I use that term advisedly because as an archaeologist, it's been my privilege to shake the dust off the print on the 1840 edition at the Second Times and Seasons at Nauvoo, and to find those tiny pieces of type and be able to replicate or to see where that book was published in 1840 was for me a special privilege. That takes us back again to Isaiah 29 with the the warnings about people having their voices come from the dust. And yet, archaeology is very much the means whereby that is done. And so, while we do have the book as evidence from the dust, I would submit that we have an awful lot of evidence that archaeology is able to produce artifacts that tell the truth. And that should give pause to historians that don't.
Thank you. I love that phrase, give pause. You may not want to pause for 2 years on one page, but go ahead and pause at least.
Okay, let's open it up for the other people. We've got a whole line of people wanting to get in on this. And so thank you for stirring up so much interest.
Okay,
Should I
so
call on them or do you want to, Paul? I was just going to
Let-
kind
let-
of go to people who haven't spoken yet.
Deb is the coordinator of the.
Okay, sorry. Deb,
oh,
over
you're
to you,
fine.
Deb.
You're fine. Terry's going to be first and then Jerry Grover. So Terry, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. Very good, intriguing presentation. I appreciate it. The one thing I want to address is mistakes, because that's a sore spot in me when people go to interpret the scriptures, because what is said in the Old Testament or New Testament is different than things that we say and use today. The same thing with Joseph's time. Things were said and different today. I don't know how Moroni dealt with something from Lehi compared to something from his father, because there had to be massive language changes and whatnot. So I'm real sympathetic to that. If there be mistakes, they're due to man, not God, because too much there's too much what's the right word? True interpretation of the words as we read them when they might have been meaning something different when they were given. So I just wanted to get on my soapbox about that and appreciate your presentation.
Terry, thank you. Let me, there really quickly, I didn't go into this. If you look in Mormon chapter 8, there in verse 14 and in verse 17, the first 2 times that Moroni talks about the challenge of writing, right? About how hard it is to get it right. Then you go to the end of Mormon chapter 9. He does it again. There's like verses 30 to 33. Then in Ether chapter 12, it's right. It's like verses 23 to 27. He does it once again. And then on the title page, he does it again 5 times. And Moroni doesn't write that much, right? It's pretty condensed, but 5 times within a small body of writing, he pleads for that understanding, pleads for that point. So I hope that reinforces what
Good
you're
point.
talking
Thank
about.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, Jerry, go ahead. I'll help you unmute. There you go.
Yeah, I just had if you had any thoughts, Martin Harris said that, well, was told to somebody that the title page, the seal with the concentric circles that had language written inside of them and around them was from the title page. Do you have any thoughts about that in relation to our current structure of our title page?
I don't. I'm not familiar with that. I'd love to, if you could figure out a way to get that to me, I'd love to dive into it and see what I could find out. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, looks like Gary Whiting, go ahead, and then it'll be James Lucas. Go ahead, Gary.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I really enjoyed it. There were some really interesting things.
Thank you.
I
Thank
haven't
you.
spent 2 years, but I've spent a fair amount of time looking at the Book of Mormon as in my missionary efforts and in my teaching of the Book of Mormon over time. For me, I have a couple of points. that I want to share with you. First of all, the title page to me serves as a lens to help me to interpret the book that I'm reading. So I use it in an interpretive way to help me to look at what I read in the stories to understand what that purpose is. And, you know, the Book of Mormon was carefully crafted in the way that it was put together. It's especially true when you read Nephi. He says, you know, I've selected this and I've left this out because this fits my purpose and this doesn't fit my purpose. I think Mormon did the same thing. And Moroni followed in Mormon's footsteps. So what Moroni has done for us is he gives us a lens to help us to understand what it is that the Book of Mormon is intended to do for us. He points us to the audience that it's for, and he points us to an understanding of why these things are recorded here to help us say why the story of the Book of Mormon looks the way that it does. So the title page to me helps me to interpret the book and to understand it in the context that seems to have been in the mind of the prophets as they recorded it. And the second thing, it's a personal testimony that I want to read that comes from the title page. I was preparing a sermon, and it doesn't matter a whole lot in this, but I'm from the reorganized church background, active in restoration branches at this point. But I was preparing a sermon on the Book of Mormon as the New Covenant. And I asked the question of the Lord. I said, why is it the New Covenant? And he said a couple of things to me. First, he said, because it was written by people that lived according to the New Covenant. And he showed me that on the title page, it helps us to see the process of the New Covenant. And it's, I'll just, the portion that you had talked about where it begins, written and sealed up and hid up unto the Lord, that section.
Yes.
So I saw 5 separate steps there that really seem to show how the Lord has labored through Christ to save us and preserve us and bring us to the point that we can receive eternal glory. So this is the short version. Written. The Apostle Paul talks about the saints in Corinth being his epistles, and that the law in the new covenant is to be written on our hearts. Second, sealed up. That's a function of the Holy Ghost. It's a function of entering into covenant. So he writes the law in our heart. He seals us to preserve us. And then it says we're hid up unto the Lord. Well, the Lord says that Jesus said, you're put into my hand, you're kept. And the purpose for that is that you'll not be destroyed. So it's an act of salvation. So we're hid up unto the Lord to not be destroyed. And then to come forth by the gift and power of God is a description of the resurrection. And then unto the interpretation thereof is the judgment. And so that we get a glory depending on how he sees us and according to our works. So that's just a personal bit of inspiration, a little testimony that the Lord has given to me that has helped me to appreciate the title page much more deeply.
Thank you. I really like that. That's very thoughtful, very thoughtful. I can picture, I can resonate just with the quiet time of thinking these things through and feeling their importance and feeling them talk to you. So, Gary, thank you.
Okay. James Lucas, and then it'll be Blair. Go ahead, please, James.
Okay. Well, where'd I go? Just a
You're
second.
there. Yep, you're here.
Oh, can you see me? Okay,
Yep,
good.
we can see and hear
Um,
you.
two quick points. First, on the question of the M dashes, I pulled up here real quick a copy of the book Jesus the Christ. This is for our Community of Christ friends. This is a major theological work that was written by James E. Talmage, the LDS apostle who had a big role in coming up with our 1920 edition. And I'm just noting here, I don't know if it's going to show up on the screen much, but here's his table of contents. And you can maybe see, if not, if you have a copy of it, you can see. Anyway, he loves his M dashes. His table of contents is full of M dashes. So I would suspect that that was a stylistic preference of James E. Talmage, and that may just be all the explanation that is available for.
James, you've just earned your place, and well, if I mention by name, it's going to be a footnote. But I think the idea, I think that's a brilliant connection.
Right. So second point, and this is a question you mentioned at the beginning, a very interesting observation, which is the title page doesn't mention the small plates of Nephi. So I was wondering if you are familiar with Jonathan Neville's two sets of plates theory. If you haven't heard that, so Jonathan Neville has published a theory that the plates, the abridged record of Mormon that was translated in Harmony, and the small plates of Nephi, which were translated in Fayette and that constitute First Nephi through Words of Mormon at some point, were two separate sets of plates, and that there's a lot of historical points he makes to argue for those, and the theories had some receptivity. Richard Bushman likes it, and there's going to be an article by Don Bradley appearing very shortly in BYU Studies, picking up on that and elaborating on theory. But the relevance for our discussion this evening is that one of the evidences for the idea that they were the plates, while kept together in the same repository or kept together in the same set of records by Mormon, were not attached to each other and therefore were separate and were translated separately in Harmony and in Fayette. And one of the evidences of that is that the title page does not mention the small plates of Nephi. And the explanation, this theory would explain why that's the case, because it would say that the title page is the title page for Mormon's record. And it is, and that's why there's no mention of Nephi's record on the title page, because at the time Moroni wrote it, it was, I believe, probably contemplated by Mormon that his record would consist of what we have from Mosiah to the end of the Book of Mormon, plus the lost pages, the complete record of Mormon, and that the addition of the record of Nephi was not necessarily contemplated originally by Mormon, and or Moroni, and that's why their title page doesn't make a mention of the small plates of Nephi, which were only brought forth by the Lord provided to Joseph after the lost pages were lost as a sort of substitute to give you the history that you needed to have that we would have had the 116 pages not been lost. So anyway, that's an explanation for why.
Thank you.
And it's relevant to your discussion because it then tells us something. If that's the case, if this theory holds up, that explains what the title page is. In other words, it's the title page to Mormon's record, not the title page really to the Book of Mormon we have, which is an amalgamation of the non-lost pages part of Mormon's record, and then this separate record that was kept by the original Nephi and the original earlier Nephites.
James, thank you. I just a real quick thought on that. I mean, I've written about 70 pages. The article maybe somebody will publish it, maybe it won't. But I actually speculate a bit, since the title page mentions the plates of Nephi, and since that is the terminology used to apply to both the small plates and the large plates, that there's some ambiguity there. And then the thought that I have is Moroni clearly has, by the time he writes the title page, he has spent years studying the small plates. Mormon had only a very, I think, brief time at the end of his life that he was exposed to them. But Mormon clearly loved the small plates, deeply moved by them, and insisted they be preserved, as you say, alongside the large plates. Moroni was also deeply moved. Again, the evidence, and again, Grant Hardy has written quite a bit about how much Nephi's writings are reflected in Moroni's writings. And so I just kind of laid it out there kind of as a not a squishy idea, but as a ponderable idea that Moroni is actually acknowledging and expressing appreciation for both sets of plates when he refers to the plates of Nephi. Clearly, in actuality, as he gets to the end, and again, I'm pretty firm on believing he's taking that second purpose statement straight from Nephi. His indebtedness to Nephi's writings is it's right out there, and it's very real, and it's very significant. But I'll look forward to reading. I think I mentioned what I just said. I mentioned to Joe Spencer, and Joe Spencer is a name that I hope are familiar with. And Joe, just his face almost turned into a prune when I said that. Like he didn't really agree. So I'm putting that out there tentatively. Anyway, thank you.
Sure thing. And thank you for your presentation. Very, very interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks, James. Okay, Blair, it's your turn. Go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Okay. I want to build on what James was talking about, the different sets of plates. We have a set of characters called the characters transcript or Anthon transcript that I have translated. And there are many phrases that are common between the title page that's in the Book of Mormon and that document. It's not the same document, but it is one that is similar. And I have kind of developed a working hypothesis that when they had these different sets of plates, that you weren't going to walk over to the shelf and pick up a 50-pound hunk of metal plates if you didn't know what was in each one, and that each one of those sets of plates had some account written at the end of it that told what was listed in the plates themselves. And therefore, there's going to be, for one set of plates or another, a whole lot of overlap, but they're not going to be the same. Now, I see that the title page of the Book of Mormon that we've got right now is the title page that was in the small plates of Nephi. That describes the content, basic content, and I think you did a fantastic job of making that all meaningful.
Thank you.
But it's not the same as the characters transcript, even though there are phrases that are the same. For example, the testifying to the Jews that Jesus is the Christ is in both of them. The statement that it's by the spirit of prophecy and revelation is in both of them. Both of them indicate that it was Mormon who wrote the characters, and Moroni who wrote a second part. I don't know whether I'm correct with that, but I don't think that they would have had those different sets of plates without something on the outside that said, this is which set of plates it is. So you make sure you go get the right ones. And I want you to comment on that, please.
It's interesting. So what you're suggesting is that there would have been a title page for the large plates and a title page for the small plates.
Yes.
And that the resonance that you feel between the title page is with the small plates there.
Yes.
That's interesting. It's an interesting hypothesis. When you look at Mormons' reaction to the small plates right there in the words of Mormon, it's very Christ-centered. It's very moving. And there's a
It
a strong,
whispereth in me,
yeah,
he says.
yeah. Anyway, that's I thank you for sharing that. That's an interesting idea. And I wonder, can I complicate it a little bit?
Sure.
There's one other significant record that we never talk about, but it was Moroni transcribed it, and it's the visions of the brother of Jared. And I've thought quite some distance about in whether or how Moroni's love for, appreciation for, involvement with, I mean, the record of the brother of Jared might be reflected on the title page. It's when you stop and think about Moroni as an author, as an abridger, as a thinker, as a prophet. We are missing, I'll just throw it out there, 85% of what he did, of what he was about. How long do you think it took him to labor over the transcript and translation from the brother Jared's language into Moroni's own language and inscribe it onto those plates? I think his involvement as a prophet, as a writer of scripture, as a disciple of Christ, I think he was. I like to swim. I'm an open water swimmer, and I think Moroni spent a lot of time swimming around that reservoir. And I think the brother of Jared's writing could well be a reservoir, and Mormon's abridgment might be, a 50-meter pool. Anyway, I perhaps there was a title page to that record as well, that aspect of Moroni's writing that might be filtered in here. Anyway, my comment was not as sophisticated and as carefully articulated as yours, but I think there's lots still to think about and to understand about the title page. And I think,
With you on that.
yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Blair. David Denning, go ahead, please.
Loved your presentation, Fred.
Thank you.
This was a delight. I want to return to when you were at BYU Idaho and that Chinese member walked up to you. Was she asking you to look at a Chinese title page or an English title page?
Side by side translation, Mandarin. Her husband had been a mission president in Taiwan. They had just recently returned. She's she's not an unsophisticated or simplistic reader, student of the Book of Mormon.
But the reason I ask is because the first translation of the Book of Mormon from English to Chinese was done in 1965. I served a mission in Taiwan,
Okay.
and so I'm sitting here looking at my my Chinese Book of Mormon, and that's what I was just wondering, because now I'm curious, because I actually am going to go and do some looking compared to, because in around 1990 or so they did a newer translation, a more cleaner version. The first translation was from Hong Kong using traditional Chinese, and they have recently done changed it to the simplified Chinese characters.
Okay.
And so it just intrigued me, because I'm going to do a comparison to see how that might have changed the Chinese translation as well.
I would love to. Can you imagine a whole seminar devoted, maybe not just a couple of hours, maybe all day, just having people bringing together all the different languages into which the book has been translated, not all, but at least a dozen or so, and look at how this ambiguity in the text at that critical point in the text has been handled by different different translators. The French, where it says, which is to show unto the remnant of the house of Israel. The French, the translator, the current translation simply says, the purpose of this book is to show. They add a whole, like 4 or 5 different words, new words, in order to clarify, but it doesn't necessarily clarify, because when it says the purpose of this book, the most recent antecedent of the phrase this book is right there to the Book of Ether at the beginning of that paragraph. It's the paragraphing really makes a difference in understanding how it guides you. I first realized this when I read Grant Hardy's rendition of Book of Mormon back in 2003 that was done in paragraphs rather than verses. It really changes. To me, it was a real eye-opener. Just the understanding and the questions and the thoughts and the impressions were very different when you structure the text not in these sound bites.
Yes. Well, I went through the military Chinese language training,
Okay.
and
DLI.
they would,
Yep.
yep, DLI, and the instructor would say, "Okay, I need you to translate this," and so they would play it. I would translate it to English, and she would say, "Oh, no, no, you're not translating it correctly. You need to use these words." And and I looked at her and I said, "I've been speaking my entire life, and I speak American English. We don't even use those words." And because she grew up in Beijing, she learned England English.
Okay.
And so when it comes to translations, there is always um, that part which is on the title page, is it's the faults of it's the faults of men, not the faults of the actual purpose in the message.
Maybe we should read it. If there be mistakes, they are the faults of the translators.
Yes, yes, exactly. But it was so funny. Um, but just case in point, and this is considered in the title page, because so this is the Book of Mormon version translated in 1965.
Okay.
And it says Mormon Jing, and so Mormon. Unfortunately, in Chinese, um, Mogwai means the devil. So it's the same sound, Mo. And so if you didn't show them the character, we would have to, we would say, oh, we're from the Mormon church. And we would have to then clarify which character we were talking about when we said the word Mo. Otherwise, they thought
Okay.
we were saying Devil's Gate Church.
Okay.
They're in the most recent translation, they have corrected that to avoid that kind of conflict. Because now, if you'll look where it says, the Book of Mormon,
Mhm.
it's now 3 sounds and not 2, and it's more Armon. Jing, they changed the word of Mormon to be 3 syllables and not 2.
Okay. Ingenious.
So,
Ingenious.
so I just thought you would appreciate that, because it goes back to what we were discussing earlier on the translation. So, but once again, thank you for your presentation. It was such a delight. Do you know Andy E. Hat?
No, I know
And-
I know of him from his
Okay.
writings about, I think Joseph Smith, I think the Council of 50 too, he wrote an
Yes.
article about the Council of 50. So, but
Okay.
no, I don't.
No, well,
Thanks,
thank you very
David.
again. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
If I could just interject here, if we're going to do comparisons side by side with different versions of the title page, I'd be curious also to see the Community of Christ versions.
Yes.
Since in the LDS side, you pointed out, we've been making a bunch of changes. So I'd like to see how that title page got preserved in the Community of Christ Book of Mormon as well. Because I know James E. Talmage's dashes probably aren't in there in the Community of Christ title page.
Thank you, Carol. I'm looking at that. It looks like it's reading as sentences or as sentence-like punctuation. Is that fair?
Yeah. Carol, did you want to unmute?
Yes,
it
I
said
think
you're-
yes. No dashes. But
Okay.
No dashes in sentence.
You got your colons though.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Can I ask a question? This isn't, your point, James, I think also pertains to footnotes. Does anybody know whether in the Community of Christ edition of the Book of Mormon, there are footnotes to the title page embedded in the body of the text? Like, would you go to 2 Nephi 26, verse 12, and at the bottom go back and look at the title page.
I don't think so.
Okay. I just spent the last 2 weeks writing an appendix to my study where I'm recommending passages that should refer back to the title page. And anyway, that's again, you have no idea the narrowness of the rabbit holes that I can go down.
I think that the Restored Covenant edition of the Book of Mormon does have. I don't have any of those specifically identified, but the footnoting in the Restored Covenant edition is really quite good, quite extensive. So I anticipate that we'll find them there.
Should I tell you my shorthanded way? I was going to say cheating way, but I'll just say shorthanded way. I get them on Kindle, and then I just do a search for the phrase, title page, and I can cover a lot of ground really, really quickly. But I would, Paul, please, if you wouldn't mind, if you find some, or if there's a way to look for those, I would love to be able to reference those in my discussion of that I'm trying to write here. So,
Gary,
folks,
did you have something you wanted to add to the conversation on that?
Oh, I was just going to mention that the Restored Covenant edition has extensive footnoting on that page.
on the title page?
On the title page, yeah. Now, that was a privately done edition of the Book of Mormon. And I looked in the Bickertonite Book of Mormon, they don't seem to have any footnotes, and they have dashes. And in the Church of Christ Temple lot, or the Hedrikites, their title page, does not have any scriptural footnoting. It has a historical note, but it doesn't have a, and there's no dashes.
Okay. All right. I think we're building a consensus here. Well, a near consensus.
Well, and what a fascinating study. Again, I want to thank you, Fred. It's been delightful.
Well, you guys have been patient. I
You'll
can't
notice that
imagine that so many people actually hung on to the bitter end. You guys, you know, you must all have peanuts or popcorn hidden away in the drawer that you keep yourself entertained too. But thank you.
This forum delights in this kind of presentation, and you're hearing just a bit of that affirmation. And I assure you that there's a lot more that's not being audibly uttered. But it is my privilege to hear those comments from people who are otherwise pretty quiet.
Thank you. Paul, let me conclude with a thought, can I? This is kind of a wrap up. When I started this study 2 years ago, January, it'll be 2 years ago this January, I had two thoughts. One was, oh my gosh, how quickly we passed by. We were just starting the study of the Book of Mormon in the LDS Come Follow Me curriculum, and just went so quickly by it. But I think part of and it was actually a little bit of pain that I felt, was the realization that I came to that my love of the Book of Mormon, my belief, my devotion to the Book of Mormon is directly tied to my international upbringing. And that phrase that speaks of Jesus is the Christ, the eternal God, manifesting himself unto all nations. I realized at that moment, a year ago, January, that in my heart, I had carried silently, and at times I didn't even realize how deeply embedded in my heart that principle, that idea was. And I wrote it down. I wrote down some thoughts about that someplace, and but that carried me for a long ways. Just I met a Palestinian boy when I was 10 years old, and we couldn't speak each other's language, but I remember thinking over and over again over the course of my life that whatever I do has to square with the reality that God's children are everywhere. And just that the way the Book of Mormon, I don't know what word I was going to say, punctuate, the way the word, that part of the title page brings that to life, means everything to me. Everything. So thank you for tolerating my my obsession, but so you know that there was a bit of holiness there somewhere.
Please don't feel the need to apologize, for this Book of Mormon forum is open to all kinds of perspectives, and we treasure the research that people do on details. We've had presentations on single words previously. We've had, but we continue to seek out. As a matter of fact, I've got an open spot on December 15th, looking for someone to fill that with that would like to volunteer. And I think I heard, I may have heard somebody this evening somewhat volunteering for that. Gary Whiting, I think, may have been asking for a spot. And if available, December 15th is open for someone, so let me know. But ladies and gentlemen, I do appreciate so much the range of information that comes in. Look at the fascinating comparison between last week and this. And here we are approaching the Christmas season. We're in the 6th year of this forum. We have only repeated the Christmas occasion with Ron Smith a couple of times. Otherwise, it's always something unique, something special. And the remarkable research that people have been doing has proved to be such a blessing that you have an audience like this on this forum, Fred. And so Yeah, if you have any additional commentary you'd like to make with another session, the forum will be open for people to share, I hope, for months and years to come. And with that, we are one in the Spirit, we are one in the Lord. We are one in the Spirit, we are one in the Lord. And we'll pray that our unity may one day be restored, and they'll know we are Christians by our love, by our love. Yes, they'll know we are Christians by our love. Thank you all. Good night, and may God bless you with peace and understanding and a continued. Oh, yes, and Boyd has a hand up. He gets to speak next week, and so therefore he may need a preliminary comment. Yes, Boyd.
Yes, everyone be ready for next week when we talk about baptism and study about it this week here and be ready to talk about because I'm going to have a short presentation and it's going to just open up to cross conversation to everyone. So if you would prepare for it and study ahead of time, that would be really helpful.